Hi, I'm Tracy Sofra and welcome to the Women of Wealth podcast. I'm going to talk to you about some investment concepts today, and I'm going to explain probably the top 5 that you should really be aware of. These are basic conceptual, knowledgeable things that you should know when it comes to investing. Now, I've got to say, the world of finance, I know it can be daunting and there's lots of terminology, and sometimes there's 3 different words that explain the same thing, you know, asset allocation and asset class and risk profiling and all of these words. And sometimes it can get really, really confusing and overwhelming. And you know what happens when we do that? It's like, nah, too hard basket, and we do nothing. And there could be nothing worse than doing nothing, right? So the other thing I will say is that my industry and the media make it out to be this extraordinary thing that is only for the rich and famous, or for the super elite smart people. Well, I'm going to tell you it's not, and it is not rocket science, and I'm going to break it down into the most simplistic form and share that with you today. And you're going to say, oh, wow, Trace, that was so simple. Why didn't I know this beforehand? So with that in mind, let's get real. Let's not over dramatize. And here am I going to explain my top 5 concepts that you should know before you start investing. And these are, I'll say this, they're never going to change. They're basic foundational things that you just need to know. They may be, people might talk about it in a different sense, but the same principles apply is what I'm trying to say to you here. So top 5 concepts, what are they? The first one is asset classes. Why is it important and why should you know? Asset classes refer to, what can I invest in, Trace? I'm ready to invest. What can I invest in? Okay, property, shares, fixed interest and cash. They're the 4. Let me drill down into each one of those to keep it simple and to make it so it makes sense from where you're standing when you're about to go and invest. Property, we talk about if you're going to invest in property, you either invest directly in your name or you invest through a managed fund or an ETF. Shares is the same thing. You can invest in shares in your own name on a NAB trade account or a ComSec account. I talk about the basic things so it makes sense to everyone, depending on what platform you're on. Or you can invest in shares through a fund manager. Fixed interest, you can buy bonds directly if you wish, or you can invest in those bonds through funds management. And cash is cash, really. Cash is money in the bank. And anytime you invest in a managed fund or an ETF, there will be a cash component in there where all the pivotal stuff happens, you know, fees come out, savings plans goes in, all the returns on those investments go in there, and so on and so forth. So asset classes refers to what can I invest in, and what you can invest in is important because each one of those asset classes has different characteristics. So I always break it down into defensive and growth. Defensive is fixed interest and cash. Growth is property and shares. These guys will give you the returns you're looking for over the long term. These guys, the growth guys, need time to give you that growth, and they will deliver that growth. The defensive ones, they only have the ability to pay you an income return. They don't have the ability to grow, much like shares and property do. And that is why these guys are good for the short term. These guys are good for the long term. Why do we combine them? Is my next topic, which is diversification. Why do we diversify? Because we're trying to smooth out volatility. Volatility is where shares go up and down all the time. Properties may go up and down all the time. If you have your money all in the one place, your portfolio is going to go up and down all the time rather than have a smoother ride. So we diversify, 1, to smooth out volatility, 2, to get the best returns where we can, when we can. Yeah, it's like it's like just making sure that you don't put all your eggs in the one basket. So if you have all your eggs in, say, just a direct property in your own name, you've got no exposure to shares or any bonds or, say, other types of property through REITs, real estate investment trusts, you're not going to get any of the returns or any of the upturn on any of those markets. You're simply not in there to actually receive a return. So we want to have a little bit in everything, so we get the benefit of the growth in each one of those assets. It helps us smooth out volatility, and it helps us to build a strong portfolio over the long term. So asset classes and diversification really go hand in hand, because you can't diversify if you don't have an array of asset classes, right? So you put a little bit into everything. And how do you put a little bit into everything? My next point, risk profile. Based on your risk profile, which is what? Your tolerance to risk, how you feel about if your money went down 30% overnight, would you put in more? Would you pull it out? Would you wait and see? What is your long-term goals? What are you trying to achieve? How much time have you got? Once you answer all those questions, you pretty much work out what your risk tolerance is. You use that risk tolerance, guidelines in investing in the right asset classes to the right percentages. So what your first port of call would be to make sure you're working out what your risk profile is. Okay, so let's say I'm a balanced investor. Much like the word describes, it's probably 50-50. When I do this, what I'm talking about is fixed interest and cash, property and shares, say 50-50. If my risk profile comes out that I'm balanced, I want 50-50, that means that I'm going to diversify my portfolio in 50-50 in those asset classes. So that's how those three terms are interrelated and interconnected. And I want to also say that as your journey in investing grows and as you become a more seasoned investor and you're getting more confident, I recommend that you review your risk profile every single year, because I'm guessing you're going to go from probably a balanced, you might have started out as a conservative, but a balanced to more of a balanced growth. When the terms come from conservative to balanced to growth or high growth, all it means is that there is more of a percentage of your portfolio sitting in property and shares than fixed interest and cash. That's all that means. But as your investment journey moves on and you become more confident and you're enjoying what you're doing and your risk profile is going up higher, and it doesn't always do that, but if it does, then you align your portfolio to match that. So you go back to the drawing board and you just check how well diversified you are and what the percentages are, and make sure you're invested accordingly to your risk profile in those asset classes. Pretty simple. Those three are so well interrelated and pretty simple to do. Number 4 is really, really important. I'm going to give you this amazing example that we came across recently. So number 4 is dollar cost averaging. Dollar cost averaging is a funky term to say, hey, when you've set up your investment, so you've done your risk profile, you've diversified across those asset classes, now I want you to, so you've done the initial investment like that, now I want you to add to that on a monthly basis, and that's the power of compound over time. And I want to give you an example. So we had one of our beautiful members say to me, Trace, I've got $90,000 in the bank and I need to do a renovation on the home worth $40,000. I don't want to, she was really, really conscious that she didn't want to go off and spend the $40,000 on the reno and invest less. And she wanted to make sure that she wasn't giving into instant gratification. But there was another element to her financial position. Yes, she had the 90 and she needed to spend 40 on renos, but her cash flow surplus was $1,500 a month in total. So if she decided that she was going to invest the whole $90,000, she was only able to put $800 of that $1,500 to a savings plan, because the rest of it she needed to save for the renovation. So she had a couple of options. She either invested the whole $90,000 and save out of cash flow for the renos, And that's why her savings plan would go from 1,500 to 800. Or she could do the reno right here, right now, and invest what's left, 50,000, but add the savings plan of 1,500 a month ongoing because she'd already met her needs for her renovation. Do you want me to tell you what the numbers are? And it's mind-boggling, right? Most people would think that, and I did this over a 10-year period. So what I did was I stuck these figures into a calculator to see what it would look like in 10 years' time at a rate of return at 8%. If she put in 90,000 now and did not and saved towards the renovation, so 90 today, 800 a month over 10 years at 8%, she would get 375,434. If she decided, no, I'm going to do the renovation of 40,000 and I'm going to invest what's left, which is 50, but I'm going to have extra every month because I've already done the reno and I don't need to part with my 1,500 saving for a reno. I've already done it. So I've got 50 grand to invest and 1,500 a month to save. Guess what that was in 10 years' time at 8%? 412,839. Mind-boggling, right? You'd think that putting 90 grand in versus 50 over a 10-year period with 800 on the 90 and 1,500 on the 50, you'd think that the 90,000 would be worth more, but it's not. And you know why? Because the power of compound of the 1,500 rather than 800 is astronomically different, and you can see it in the numbers from 375 if she did 90 to 4112 if she did 50. That's extraordinary. And that is the power of compound. And that is what I wanted to communicate with you today, to never, ever underestimate the power of compound. So clearly she was really happy that she could take her 90, spend the 40 on the reno, invest the 50 and stick to that investment savings plan of 1,500, the maximum of her cash flow. And she was going to end up potentially, what's the math there? Nearly, so 25, 45, 47, nearly 50 grand more. It's extraordinary, but it's powerful. So dollar cost averaging, do not underestimate the power of that. Once you've done your risk profile, you've diversified across asset classes and you're adding to it on a monthly basis. That really is, when you're talking about from an investment point of view, that's really all you need to focus on. It's those simple 4 concepts right there. I've added in one more that I really want you to know that not a lot of people talk about, not a lot of people have an idea of. It's called, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called the Rule of 72, double your money. The Rule of 72, it really is a rule of thumb that we use, and it's a shortcut used to estimate the number of years that it will take to double your money, or vice versa, the rate of return you need to double your money. Here's an example. Okay, you've got 10 grand and you are able to get 8%. How long will it take for you to double your money? You simply take 72, divide it by the rate of return, 8%, and it equals 9 years. So if you had $10,000 and you could go and put it on an investment that would give you 8%, it will take 9 years for you to double your money. It's a rough rule of thumb. So you take the 72 and divide it by the rate of return to get the years. If you want to do the opposite and work out how much, what's the return you need to double your money in 6 years. So you've got 10 grand and you want to double your money in 6 years. What's the rate of return you need? You take 72, you divide it by the rate of the 6 years, and it says 12% rate of return. That's a bit risky, right? Who's going to give you 12%? So you might look at that and go, I might need to go out a little bit more because I'm going to take a really high risk trying to find something at 12%. So it gives you a barometer, an idea. So in terms of what's the rate of return I need to double my money, 12%, 6 years, I might need to go out a little bit more. Or, so what's important in this sort of formula is to give you the option to say, oh, okay, well, maybe I need to go 7 or 8 years. What does that look like? Or maybe I need to put a little bit more than 10,000 in. Gives you those options to look at. In the other example where you're looking at what's the time frame to double your money, if 9 years was too much, well, then maybe you need to take a little bit more risk and get the rate of return up a little bit, or maybe you need to put the investment from 10 10,000 to 12 or 15. If the result you're not getting is suiting you, you need to look at the other two options and adapt accordingly. But it's a great rule of thumb to work out how you can double your money, be it time or be it rate of return. So there it is. There's your main 5, well, the 4 for investing and the 5th one to give you a really great idea. But investment concepts are so important because they are the basic foundational knowledge that you need before you can even go and make an investment. Really understanding them, getting your head around them, getting your risk profile done, understanding the concept of diversification through the different asset classes, making sure you're adding to it, and away you go. And it really is that simple. And it's not for the rich and famous. It is for everyone. And the sooner you start, the more powerful and successful you will be, and the greater you will make your little nest egg grow. Thanks for listening. I love sharing all my little pearls of wisdom with you all. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favourite podcast platform and be sure to check out all my other episodes.